Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves. On today's show, we're going to have Steve Mitchell, a member of the Board of Selectmen, helping us with the Board of Selectmen update. We're also going to be speaking with Police Chief Craig Davis of Ashland regarding the opiate crisis and addiction and how our police and public safety departments are handling it and how you can also handle it if you have someone in your life who's dealing with it. We're then going to also be introducing you to Beth Reynolds, our new Economic Development Director here in Ashland, and talk about what she's done since she started with us in January. Of course, we'll have a short Around the Town and a sports update. So stay with us for more Around the Clock. Welcome to Around the Clock, our Selectmen's Update. This is Steve Mitchell, a fellow member of the Board of Selectmen, and this is an update for the meeting that happened on February 3rd. Steve, why don't you start us off, how we started?
Well, we always, as we always do, we start with citizen participation, and we had our regularly scheduled guest as citizen participation, name not needed to at this point, but we had some good comments at citizen participation, and then we had some hearings scheduled, one of which was a continuance of a hearing for an entertainment license at Honto Restaurant, and we had to as well accommodate a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors because of a resignation. So that took up a fair amount of time, but we got through both of those situations.
It was interesting with the Board of Assessors because the Board of Assessors is 3 people, they're all elected.
Yep.
One of the members is currently out of state for a number of months. Another member just resigned. So it was a joint meeting between Board of Selectmen and the one member from the Board of Assessors. But because we had the majority from those two, we were able to appoint a Board of Assessor. So Steve Greenberg stepped up.
Right.
And then he will run in the May election should he decide to continue on the board.
So his appointment is through the May 17th election of this year. So thanks to Steve for stepping up and certainly his expertise. He's got the background and expertise to fill that role. So.
And Honto now has a full entertainment license.
And a very interesting process. And I think like a lot of situations that we're faced with, we try to find the right balance between a request like this for entertainment of a certain type where it abuts a neighborhood.
Right.
And where we've had some concerns from the residents, and again we tried to find that right balance, and I do think that that Honto did provide a good solution for everybody. So I think it worked out well. So good luck to Honto, and we certainly want to support our local businesses, particularly our restaurants, because of the meals tax. So keep going out to eat.
Right. And then we had acceptance of minutes. We had some selectmen appointments. We added Elizabeth Whitman to the Warren Woods Ad Hoc Expansion Committee. We announced a notice for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Right. Yep.
Then we had some town manager appointments. We have a new conservation agent in town, so that was nice to see. Brittany Iacopone, who was our town accountant, is now our finance director.
Right.
And then we got into the real meat and potatoes of the meeting. Brittany gave us a visual budget presentation. Thank you for bringing that idea back from the MMA conference last year.
Well, that's, you and I have discussed many times the value that we have found going to Mass Municipal annual meeting, and that was one of the things that from a year ago we brought back and we were able to implement. So we can now go onto our town website, and you can there's a link for visual budget. It'll take you right there, and it's really very self-explanatory, I think, in a lot of ways, or intuitive, and you can really dig into different parts of the budget to see how much of your actual tax dollars you as an individual resident and household get applied to particular services and programs in town. So it's a very cool presentation. And of course it ties in now to the fact that we're also updating our website at some point. So.
Right, website's going to be up and running probably by the end of February, so it'll be nice to see all those transitions. Some of the things that we're working on as selectmen as part of our vision is to increase engagement and communication with the citizens of Ashland. So
Right.
all of these things are positive things going toward that.
And, hopefully it's going to be a lot easier website to use. I'm confident that it will be.
Yeah.
If you're like me, I am very frustrated and have been for a long time with our current website.
Correct.
And I'm sure most residents
Most of our
are.
residents have. It's one of the things we've heard a lot about. We also signed and approved Mike Herbert's contract. We spoke to Mike Herbert last show about his transition into the town manager's position. So we now know that we officially have him for, at least for the contract length, hopefully longer.
Hopefully longer. It's we worked, I think, 2 or 3 sessions in negotiation, and I think everybody. It was a good collaboration. I thought the board did a great job of working together. I think everybody had some ideas that they brought, and I think we considered everything and put it together in a pretty collaborative way. And I think we were all pleased to have a process that kind of flowed the way
Yeah.
it did, with the interim appointment into the full contract. So.
What's been interesting, though, is even though we had a lot of publicity about doing the interview with Mike, and there's been conversations, I still had people asking me, so what are we doing about a town manager? And
Well,
that goes to some of the communication and reaching out to people.
Yeah, I will say that most of the interactions I had with residents were almost exclusively favorable in terms of the
Right.
process, in terms of the fact that
Yeah.
we were moving our assistant town manager into the full position. So, I was pleased with that. I mean, it's not very often as select people that we
Right.
have that kind of
Positive feedback?
feedback.
Yeah.
So it was great. And I would probably just point out, if any residents are interested in seeing the contract, what we worked on and approved, it's available at the Board of Selectmen's office at Town Hall to
And
review.
eventually will be up on the website as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. We also approved our road traffic safety committee, so we're looking for 2 volunteers. That'll be looking at all kinds of road issues, traffic issues, things that come up, complaints, issues that are presented from the citizens. So if you're interested in joining that committee, you can go ahead and fill out a talent bank form, and hopefully either our next meeting or the first meeting in March, we'll be creating that committee and moving forward.
Right. So that's an interesting committee. It was brought forth by Sergeant Berman from our police department, and it really, our experience on the board, we've been faced with resident concerns about whether it's speeding, whether it's dangerous intersections, and so on. And it falls in our arena as
Right.
road commissioners, but we don't really have that expertise.
Correct.
And when this was brought forth, it seemed like a great solution for having people that can really kind of analyze the situation and then bring it to us with a recommendation. So
Right.
I think it's a great idea. And again, it was 2 citizen participants on this committee. So I think it's going to be a very valuable committee for the community.
Yeah. I also think it'll tie into some of our other initiatives that we're working on, our Complete Streets program and how we design our streets and our intersections, our Safe Routes to School program, where we're looking for ways to
Right.
improve ways for students to walk to school, and not just for students to walk to school, but for people to walk into and out of downtown and to some of the
Right.
locations that we have here in town that we want to get people to go to.
Absolutely. I think we're looking at, I think the term is multimodal
Multimodal transportation.
transportation.
Yep.
So whether it's cycling or walking or driving for that matter. But Yolanda's been very, very active with safe routes to school and complete streets as
Yep.
well. So very important initiatives for the community.
Yeah. We then talked about a new subcommittee that we created for enforcement of bylaws. This was another one where we've had people telling us that bylaws aren't being upheld or being enforced. So that was good to create that one, and
Yep.
nice for Carl and Joe to. It was nice how you volunteered, Joe, by the way.
Well, he was, with his background, with Joe's background in the police department, I think it's something that he's a natural fit
Right.
to it. And I know Carl's been concerned with some enforcement issues of various types over the last
Yeah.
period of time. But, I think it's, there's so many of our bylaws that do have enforcement
Right.
issues. And I think you did bring this up last night, that it's whether it's related to traffic, whether it's related to parking, whether it's related to health, whether it's related to building issues. So,
Sign issues,
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
lot,
So-
there's a lot.
So ultimately, I think, what is a reasonable expectation for enforcement of bylaws?
Right,
So, and
right.
how do we best apply our resources to do so?
Right, because we do have limited resources to make sure those bylaws
Right.
are followed. Okay. We also extended the premises for TJ Spirits for their annual Boston Marathon Monday extravaganza.
Right? Looking forward to, hopefully, Marathon Day is pleasant and good for both the runners and the
Yes.
spectators. So.
Yeah, though with this weather, you get concerned as to what's going to be happening in April if we're having 55-degree weather in February. So we'll have to see. We then had some town manager reports, website report, as we mentioned, the new website should be up by the end of February. The assistant town manager, the ad has gone out, so hopefully no later than the end of March, we'll have a new assistant town manager to
Right.
help Mike keep his head above water. And then we got a quick budget update where we're at with the 2017 budget and the fact that most likely we'll be creating two budgets, one that tracks with just the 2.5% and the other one that tracks should the override,
the override,
get
right.
passed. And that brings us to our last discussion and last point that we talked about last night, and that was the override. The Board of Selectmen did vote to put an override on the ballot. Steve, I'm going to let you take the lead on this discussion because you were a member of the Override Study Committee. So tell us a little bit of history about the whole Override Study Committee and then how we got to where we did last night.
Sure. So the Override Study Committee was created back, I would say, over the summer, where the tri-board process decided that we should explore, how do we solve the structural deficit that existed at that point in time. So that's where the Override Study Committee started. We went through, I'm going to say, roughly 22 meetings.
That number keeps going up.
Keeps going up. That's why I looked to Mark Terry from the school committee last night, because he is a member of the committee, and I
Right.
just wanted to be fairly accurate. But so we met over many months, numerous meetings, and we worked through a process where we tried to, certainly analyze the structural deficit that exists, as well as look at other needs within the community. And ultimately, we came, with that process, came to a recommendation that was provided to the Board of Selectmen, the School Committee, and the Finance Committee. There has been, there was, and there continues to be, up until last night, a lot of discussion about the form of the way the override would be presented to the community. Originally, or at least the recommendation from the study committee, was a two-tier approach. And it was, after a lot of discussion subsequent to that, we determined, meaning the Board of Selectmen determined, it might be a little bit too confusing to understand the mechanics of the tiered system. So ultimately, we've had, at least in terms of the Board of Selectmen, we've had an initial board meeting discussion, and then we had a workshop, and then we met last night to really, I guess, come away with a decision, which is what we did. And we ultimately decided on a two-question format.
Yep.
And we broke it out into an operating budget question and then a economic and community development stabilization fund question.
Right.
So two separate and distinct questions. You vote yes or no for either one, for both. And that's, but they're separate and distinct. One doesn't depend on the other.
Right, right. And what I found interesting was, as we were having the discussion last night, and I had asked some questions, the big thing I heard from both you and Rob, who have been on the committee, was that you heard that people were looking for a choice. And I think this choice, and to Carl's point, choice can either be yes or no. That's a choice right there, which had we gone with a single question, that would have just been a choice,
Right.
yes or no, $2.4 million. I think by what we did was they're still getting a choice. Do they want to spend money on operational as well as this economic development stabilization fund? So they can decide both or just one.
Yep.
But it is still going then to match what the recommendation was of the full $2.4 million
Right.
from the override study committee.
And I think that's important to point out, that the study committee, I think, was unified in the fact of this list,
Amount,
this
yeah.
entire list, and this amount of money that we determined were legitimate and real needs in the community. You know, what we didn't necessarily agree on completely was just the way that was broken out.
Right.
And I think it's important that, you know, as we move forward in this process and we start to inform and we start to have discussions within the community, that these are both very important to the community, and that we should be supporting both of them, because there's real and good needs that these will fulfill.
So explain a little bit. So I think most people understand the operational override. As a town, we've dipped into our stabilization fund for many years. Last year we got creative. We created a special education stabilization fund. So what's the benefit of splitting these two items out for the operational portion and then for that $500 stabilization fund? What, if, you know, when the citizens are asking us this question,
Sure.
what's the benefit to making it that?
So the benefit is that it's a dedicated fund for economic, as we're defining it, economic and community development, which is different than just applying the money within an operating budget. When you do so in an operating budget, ultimately that monies can go in a variety of different ways. It doesn't necessarily remain dedicated to a particular use. When you do it as a stabilization fund, it remains dedicated for that purpose, as
Right.
we've defined it. And what we're looking to do in this case, I mean, in terms of economic and community development, what does that mean?
Right.
And it really means, you know, the tangible things that people can touch and feel, like a sidewalk, like road repair. I think we've all appreciated the amount of roads that were repaired this last season. And you know, so when you talk to people in the community, those are some of the things that are important to them. You know, this has the ability to help with some of our commercial districts, whether it's 126 or whether it's downtown, some of those revitalization projects. As a community, we need to make those infrastructure investments. It's important for contributing to complete streets, to
Right.
safe routes to schools.
Right.
It's important potentially for, as an example, engineering costs for the Upper Charles River Rail Trail, those sorts of things. And so there's a lot of components that make up that fund.
We could also use it probably toward the public safety building that we're looking to do.
If
Could we
we
use
had-
it for engineering costs or
Exactly.
possibly purchase of land for that?
Right, so if we needed to, you know, as we move forward with a public safety building, if we needed to do some, as you say, engineering or some drawings and so on, that's a fund that we can
Right.
tap into. So I think there's a lot of flexibilities that we have, but again, you know, for me, why I advocated for this particular method is because it's dedicated to that purpose.
So not only this year, but moving forward, that's all the $500,000 can be used for.
Exactly, and the other component of this is that the Board of Selectmen can choose in future years not to raise that entire levy.
Right.
So there's flexibilities in that regard as well. So, and you know, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this many times over
Yes.
the coming months. And but again, I think it's clear to be clear that the Override Study Committee and I think the Board of Selectmen have all are put this forth as a package.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's the time for us to make sure the citizens have the information
Right.
and let them vote when it comes up in May.
Exactly. So we're going to be, I'm sure, all of the selectmen, school committee members, and finance committee members will be available to provide that education.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Well, Steve, thanks for coming on around the clock and helping me with the Selectmen's update.
Thank you as always.
And we may bring you back as this override discussion continues.
I'm sure we're going to be talking about it a
A
lot.
lot,
so,
yep.
My pleasure.
Okay. Well, that's it for the Selectmen's update for today's Around the Clock. Stay with us and we'll be right back with more. Welcome back to Around the Clock. My guest today, one of my guests is Chief Davis. Chief, welcome back to Around the Clock.
Thanks so much, Yolanda, for having me back.
Our discussion today, and we've had a lot of different discussions, but our discussion today is specific to the opioid crisis that's going on in Ashland as well as the state of Massachusetts. I asked Chief Davis to come on to talk about how we're handling it and what are we doing here in Ashland to help with that. So first, can you tell us what kind of statistics are you seeing here in Ashland with either just overdoses or deaths, and start with that.
Okay. Well, as you know, back in 2014, the state declared a statewide emergency, a public health crisis for the opiate problem. And, you know, each year we've seen this problem escalate more and more and more until finally there was the realization that we're now in an epidemic. This is a crisis. So it's actually, opioid deaths have now replaced fatalities due to car accidents in the past
Wow.
couple of years in Massachusetts. And that problem has not escaped any community in Massachusetts, you know, to Ashland included, you know, so it doesn't matter, you know, what kind of socioeconomic background a community has or how affluent it is or it isn't, what the, you know, the makeup of a community. The opioid problem affects this, you know, statewide. It cuts across statewide, every
Right.
community. And as I mentioned, Ashland is no different. So since 2014, we've experienced 27 overdoses, opiate overdoses,
Wow.
and 2 deaths. So obviously that's a higher number than we
Right.
would want.
Right.
But it is not atypical from what we're seeing across any other community
Yeah.
that's either in our region or across the state. So, you know, then the question is, you know, what are we doing about that as
Right.
a police department? And I think one of the things to recognize is, first of all, as I mentioned, it's a statewide public health crisis. So this can't be looked at as just a law enforcement problem. So the police department
Correct.
will never be able to figure, you know, to solve this on our own. We have to come up with a multidisciplinary strategy that cuts across all different segments to include police, fire, board of health, you know, treatment providers, recovery, you know, providers, the schools, our drug and alcohol coalition partners. It's a lot of heads working together to try to tackle this from many different dimensions. So one of the things that we did earlier on to tackle this, because we're the first ones to respond
Right.
to this. We in the fire department are the very first ones to go and see that person, you know, experiencing this overdose, you know, lying down on the ground or not breathing. So the fire department had, for quite some time, used Narcan, nasal naloxone, to reverse the effects of an opiate overdose, which causes a person to actually stop breathing. So it is a life or death emergency.
Right.
The only problem with that is sometimes we were there, and oftentimes we're there way before the fire department is, just because we're a little more mobile, we can get to places quicker.
Right.
So we were the first on scene, and we were waiting for the ambulance with the Narcan, the nasal naloxone, to arrive. So we realized we needed to be able to have that Narcan with the officers to be able to introduce it at that very second, because obviously the earlier that we
Right.
can introduce that, the greater the chances of survival for that person experiencing the overdose. So, so we were the first police department in Metro West to give each, you know, the officers Narcan. And since we have done that, we have used it 13 times
Wow.
to reverse the effects of fatal overdoses.
And when did you become certified and able to do that, the nasal Narcan?
It was early 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, so we started off with 10 doses of it, and we've used it successfully. You know, again, 13 times we've
That's
used
great.
it. So those are lives in the community that we are saving. You know, and that's what, you know, we have to focus on. These are all young people. They're all our sons, daughters, neighbors, nieces, nephews, you know, colleagues, kids. So we have an obligation to sort of all work together and to recognize that the substance abuse is a health issue instead of a criminal, justice issue.
To go to that, are you
Yep.
finding that some of the people that you're dealing with who have these overdoses, are they first-time users? Are they addicted to something? Because one of the things that I talk about with my own children is you don't want to do anything because it can affect you the first time. So in your experience, the people that you've been dealing with, are they addicted, or is it a one-time thing, or they've just tried it?
Well, predominantly they are addicted. They
Okay.
are, substance users, substance
Okay.
abusers, whatever label, you want to use. But they are people that have generally started off using prescription opiate,
Okay.
painkillers, whether it's prescribed to themselves or prescribed to other people, and they have obtained it,
Okay.
inappropriately. But either way, it's generally how it starts. And then due to tightening regulations on the availability of opiate painkillers and the expense of them, people who are addicted will often turn to heroin.
Right.
Because it's cheaper, it's easier to get. And so an opiate addiction often leads to heroin use. And we all know the opiate addiction actually changes the body's chemistry.
Right.
And
Right.
when you're addicted to an opiate, it's a heck of a thing to get off of.
So moving forward here in
Yeah.
Ashland, what are the steps that you, as well as the other departments, are taking to possibly address the issue that's happening here in town?
Well, we've, aside from the Narcan, we have installed a drug collection box in the police station. It's in the lobby of the police station. It's available 24 hours a day. People can come in and turn in their unwanted prescriptions. No questions asked. They just drop them off in that collection box. And then we have an arrangement with an incinerator company, and they're properly destroyed. So that is available 24/7, and we really encourage people to get unwanted, unused prescription drugs out of their house, out of the hands of potential misuse by family members or friends or visitors to the homes. Get them out and dispose of them properly. Don't throw them in your trash bucket, but bring them in to us, and we'll take care of it for them. We also have a sharps container for anyone that has a sharp needles that want to get rid of. We have that, as well as the community center has a sharps
Right.
container also. So we have that available all the time. We also are involved with a drug take-back day on April 30th of this year.
Okay.
And that's a national initiative. So on April 30th, we will be running a campaign, and we usually get the assistance of the folks from the Lions Club and our local drug and alcohol coalition partners, Decisions at Every
Okay,
Turn.
yep.
And collectively, we run an event on
Yep.
April 30th where people are encouraged in the community to come in and basically do the same thing, bring in their unwanted
Right.
prescriptions.
Right.
But at least it's more of a marketed event. We highlight the fact. So if it's not on everybody's presence of mind during the rest of the year, at least on April 30th, and we actually do one in the fall also. But April 30th, we will swing by the police station. We will collect unwanted prescription drugs and dispose of them properly. So that is one part of the strategy. Another part of the strategy, as I mentioned, Decisions at Every Turn, our
Yeah.
local drug and alcohol coalition. So we work very closely with them. We meet on an opiate task force and discuss, between them, us, fire department, the schools, what kind of best strategy and prevention and education efforts would be more appropriate for the community. So we're developing those partnerships and those outreach initiatives. So there's also a couple of, I guess, legal laws that people should know about, because it helps them sort of trying to figure out the best way to help people.
Right.
And that's what we really want to do, is we do want to help people. So there's one is the Good Samaritan law. So typically in the past, people were hesitant if they were with somebody that was overdosing. They didn't want to call police, they didn't want to call fire, because they felt that they would get in trouble.
Right.
Well, the new Samaritan law shields them.
Okay.
And we will not arrest people that call if they are with somebody that's overdosed, if their friend is overdosed or a relative. Our goal is to help that person.
Okay.
Help that person immediately, whether it's the introduction of Narcan or a trip to the hospital, to get them the help they need for that life-saving measure. And then after that follow-up, with trying to get them into a treatment bed and
Okay.
then recovery after treatment. So it's a multi-phase, process from immediate intervention to treatment to recovery. And we can assist people as the gateway into all of those different avenues.
What are some things, if I'm a parent or a friend or a partner of someone, and what are some signs that I should look out for that might give me an indication that this person could be heading toward this kind of addiction, or they're
towards the
in the middle
addiction?
of the addiction,
Yeah.
or
Any change, I always say any change in behavior, because a parent, obviously is in the best position to observe their child's behavior, or even a friend of their children's, so look at any changes in behavior, loss of interest in activities that maybe they were once passionate about, certainly a change in lifestyle to include friends, circle of friends. So any kind of change in their usual trajectory, we would say is a red flag. And any unexplained, missing items in the house,
okay,
sale of items, missing, checks, money, jewelry, unfortunately, those type of things.
okay,
So, that's the other thing is that the police are always sort of on the forefront of the aftermath of these addictions, because it's not just the addiction, the medical piece of it, but it's the property crimes that follow,
Right.
along with it, because in order to support the addiction often comes the thefts, and that's where we usually get involved. But if a parent or spouse or caregiver, a guardian, recognizes that someone in that relationship has an addiction, it's really interfering with their daily lifestyle, there is something that they can do. Aside calling us,
Okay.
we can provide sort of a gateway into, again, treatment, because we have relationships with Spectrum in-house treatment or Genesis day treatment or counseling. But also, there's a law called Mass General Law 123, Section 35. And the police use that sometimes, but a family member can use that also to petition the court, the district court, to force a family member into treatment.
okay,
And it is a process where you would apply to a district court judge and force the person to come before the court, where they would be evaluated by a physician. And if the physician deems, or the clinician at the courthouse deems that the person is in fact a substance user to the point where they can no longer care for themselves, or it interferes with their daily lifestyle, then they can be committed to an in-house program. And that is one of the tools that we have used successfully to force people into treatment.
Okay.
So we will act on somebody that's a substance abuser's behalf, and actually go to the court and petition the court to get that person into forced treatment. Because unfortunately, a lot of people, even though they're a substance abuser or addicted to it, they will not seek treatment.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes they need that coercive element, and a family member can do that. They don't have to
and how
bring
would
it
a
to the
family,
police's attention.
whose attention would the family member bring it to? How would they go about enacting that law to get their loved one help?
Yeah. So they could go right to the district court and make a petition
Okay,
for a, it's called in common terms, it's called a Section 35.
okay,
And they would make a petition to the district court. And so they don't even need police involvement. This can be all done without, the police involvement. But if they wanted to, we would certainly facilitate
Well,
that.
I would think that our Ashland Police Department has a good relationship with the community, that for some people it might be comforting to be able to come to the police and say, I have this issue, can you help? And I think from what you're saying, that's certainly something that, it's not that you encourage it, but you want people to know that you're here and you can help them and you can help their loved ones get help.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I only say that they can go directly to the court if they're hesitant to come to the police.
Right,
Either
right.
way, as long as the person's getting help, it's a win-win.
Right,
Whether
right.
it's through us, we will certainly do it, or if they can go directly to the court and do it. And actually, if they come into the police station, we actually have information on how to do that. we have this informational brochure that's in the lobby of the police station.
Okay.
And this actually has contact information for drug treatment centers. It has a brief segment on Section 35 petition and how to do that.
Okay.
And then there's contact information on the back. This is in the lobby of the police station. We actually give this to people that we know in the community are experiencing addiction problems.
Okay.
So they have this information. This was actually provided to us from District Court Judge David Kunis at Framingham.
Oh, good.
Who's from Ashland. So, but he gave us a supply of these, and there's some great information on there.
Okay,
And I would
great.
encourage anyone that's looking for that information to just stop by the lobby. It's there now.
Okay. Before I let you go, any last words to our community about this and how we can all work together to try and minimize it, or?
Yeah, you know, I would just say that again, as my earlier comment, that you can't just look at this as a law enforcement or a criminal justice problem. It really is a public health issue. And it really, when it's a public health issue like this, we really need to look at all of us working together on this. And it isn't looking at getting people into trouble.
Oh, no.
It's getting people the help that they need,
Right.
and get them back on their feet and make them more of a, you know, a viable member of the community and healthy member of the community, instead of always having, you know, chasing them around
Right.
and you know, and waiting for the worst. And I know there's been also some conversation about, you know, the nasal Narcan, you know, being available to family members, or, you know, making it available at, you know, to different
Yeah.
pharmacies, which I don't have an issue with. However, people have to keep in mind, if they do use that on a friend or a loved one, that it only works for about 90 minutes. The person has to go to the hospital.
Right.
When we use Narcan on somebody, they have to go to the hospital. It's
Right.
not an option.
Right. It's
They
not just
have
you
to go.
revive them and then,
Right.
okay, they're
It
good.
wears
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
The Narcan effects wear off, and I think
Okay.
there's been a lot of misperceptions about that it's,
Okay.
you know, it is a miracle drug, but there has to be a medical intervention and follow-up afterwards. But again, you know, we're working very hard with a lot of different community partners. It isn't just the police, it's police, fire department, the school system, the Decisions at Every Turn Coalition, the Board of Selectmen, the town
Right.
manager. I mean, we're all in this together, the Board of Health Director. We're all in this together. And we all work, you know, in lockstep to try to help the young people in this community.
Right. Okay. Well, Chief, thank you for coming on Around the Clock. I'm sure we'll be discussing more about this in the future, and hopefully it will be because things are getting better and not worse.
That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that's this segment of Around the Clock. We'll be right back with more. Great. Thank you. That's good. Welcome back to Around the Clock. Our Around the Town tour this show is all sports, and we're going to start with our swim team. Last Tuesday, January 26th, hold on, I'm going to say it a little bit differently. On Tuesday, January 26th, the Ashland High School swim and dive team became the Tri-Valley League champions in just their 8th year of competition. The Tri-Valley Swim and Dive League consists of Ashland, Hopkinton, Holliston Medway, Dover Sherburne, Medfield, Westwood, and Norton. Hopkinton co-opted with Ashland in 2008 to help get the Ashland swim and dive team started. After 1 year, Coach Nicole Carter led the Ashland Clockers on their own path, culminating last Tuesday night with the upset league dual meet victory of 92-91 over Hopkinton. Ashland had been trailing slightly in the meet, but Hopkinton received no points for the 100 free, where their swimmer list was submitted after the race, ending in a disqualification of all their swimmers in that event. Ashland swimmers and divers are thrilled with their upset victory. Varsity swim coach Ann Meisner, assistant varsity swim coach Erin Dunn, and varsity dive coach Heather Cavaney will lead the team into the TVL Championships being held at Keefe Tech on February 7th and 8th. Hopefully you had the opportunity to go and support them, and we will give you an update on our next show as to what their results were. We wish them luck.
It looks like he could potentially hold in the 52 if he had such a record.
Moving on in our sports update, we're going to take you to basketball. Ashland has had another big event happen. Max Feinberg just reached 1,000 points in his high school scoring career. It was celebrated at the Millis versus Ashland game that was held recently, and it was acknowledged by Mr. Adams and Mr. McGann at the high school while the game was going on.
In the corner.
Now,
Again, a little 1-2-2, looking to trap in corners. Now you give it to Diaz. This is where you get him out for the dunk. Feinberg's just trying to get it.
There it is.
That's the 1000th point.
There it is.
That's it.
Max Feinberg.
It'll be a stoppage in play. There's 1,000 points right there.
Now, for basketball fans, we do live stream all the games. And if you're at the gym and you want to watch, but you want to get a snack, you can now watch the game while it's being played out in the lobby where the live stream is going on. So you can support and have your snacks and still watch the game. I hope you enjoy our live streaming that we do on the sports as well as other events. And if you ever have any feedback about our live streaming, please reach out to us here at WACA-TV. Well, that's our Around the Town /sports update. Stay with us and we'll be back with our closing comments. Well, we're close to wrapping up this episode of Around the Clock. But before we go, a couple of upcoming things that I'd like to let you know about. First, Valentine's Day. Don't forget to share with your sweetheart and celebrate in any way you can. We also have school vacation week coming up, that third week in February. Not everyone gets that vacation week, we realize that, but if you do, enjoy it. The Ashland Farmers Market has their mini grant program up. Applications are due by March 15th. If you're interested in that, you can go to the ashlandfarmersmarket.org website, get some information, and see what they're giving grants to. It's a great way to do some initiatives here in town, and the Ashland Farmers Market loves being able to support things going on in Ashland. The last thing I want to let you know about is art in the library. Our public library is a great place to view art, and they always have some great art. Right now they have an exhibit going on by both Larry DeYoung and his wife Pamela DeYoung. And to celebrate it, on February 20th, there's going to be a reception from 2 to 4 where you can go meet the artists and see their art. So that's it for upcoming things. Of course, there's always the selectmen meetings and other meetings that are going on, so hopefully you get to watch those. But that's going to wrap it up. I'd like to thank Steve Mitchell for coming on and helping with the selectmen update. I'd like to thank Chief Davis, and I'm sure we'll have him back again. And welcome to Beth Reynolds as our new Economic Development Director. Thanks for watching Around the Clock. Stay warm, stay safe, and we'll be back in a few weeks. 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 Back in a few weeks.